Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Secret History Living Inside Your Aquarium. Today, we are going to be talking about CPO crayfish. Now, this is one of the smallest species of crayfish in the world, and it is not legal in every state, but it's a really cool fish, or crayfish, I should say, crustacean. And it's a very interesting one from Mexico. It's found high up in the mountains, and like most crayfish and other crustaceans, crabs, things like that, it does shed its skin just like a dwarf shrimp would, just like the Neocaridina or Caridina shrimp, and it carries its young underneath its tail. So back in this section here is where it would carry eggs until they are ready to hatch and be let go. However, one of the interesting things about this crayfish is that it has these claws, these pinchers, and it's relatively peaceful just due to their size. See, here's a full-grown Caridina malloa shrimp, and they can sometimes just say, "Get out of my way," and be a little bit grumpy and pinchy, but they don't seem to do too much damage except to really young, really young shrimp, and also really young fry. Now, the rundown of them, their Latin name is Cambarellus patzcuarensis, and they were discovered in 1947 by a fellow with the last name Villalobos. He was a University of Mexico City. He was at a university there, and he went up into the mountains to find these various crayfish species. Now, these crayfish in the Cambarellus family, they have all sorts of different colors and markings, mutations, and really interesting habitat quirks, but they also have been going extinct. A lot of them are very niche. A lot of them live in the desert. These guys happen to live in an alpine and somewhat dry region of central Mexico, and you can find them high up in the hills in Michoacan, and they are from the heart of an empire that ruled north of the Aztecs, and that empire is named the Tzintzuntzani culture. And what's remarkable about them is in these same mountain streams and lakes in which most these shrimp are, or these crayfish are found, they were also extracting copper, silver, and gold, and they were able to work copper, and even it's possible now they're thinking early forms of bronze and tin were being used. Definitely copper in the form of chisels and things. That's how the Aztecs built the pyramids, and they carefully guarded the secret. Now, another interesting note is that they protected these little crayfish. There were many species present, and the heart of their capital was based around a lake called Lake Pátzcuaro. I hope I'm pronouncing all this somewhat correctly. But Lake Pátzcuaro is at an enormously high elevation for a, I guess, subtropical or tropical creature. Look at the markings on this one here. And the way they live, they can go into colder temperatures and a little bit hotter temperatures, but usually you're going to find them at the lake of Pátzcuaro, and they're also found in Chapultepec, Apapec, and Opiapo Lake, as well as Tsuramu Tsutaro Lake, and those are indigenous languages, not Spanish. So, the Apapoltec things and some of those languages I'm not very familiar with, so sorry about the pronunciation on those. But they're found in these lakes, and the Pátzcuaro Lake is actually really big. It's 25 or 30 miles long, as well as 15 to 17 miles across, and then there's a large wetland area, at least that size, that used to exist. Now, these guys are threatened, and they're on the endangered species list now in the wild, this specific type. There are 19 different Cambarellus crayfish species. They're small crayfish species that actually trace back similar to lobster, and you can totally see that here. The females have a little bit larger body. This one's likely a female, but it will get a saddle right in between. See that dark spot in the back? You'll usually see a dark brown saddle appear there, and then they will have eggs that populate underneath their tail here, and those eggs will hatch just like with Neocaridina, you know, cherry shrimp or Taiwan bee shrimp, all that kind of thing. They will come out as fully formed, teeny tiny little versions of their parents. Now, just like any shrimp, crayfish, or crab, these guys also, and this is a male over here, shed their skeleton and their exoskeleton, and as they grow, they do this less and less. But here you can actually see those translucent edges there, and there's some hairs on the shell there. They'll actually climb out of this, and it's rather alarming compared to a dwarf shrimp or the small shrimp species. These guys, they really leave behind an exoskeleton. The shrimp leave behind this little white thing, this clear thing, and just so you can see, they can live together in relative harmony. However, as I said, they can get pinchy. So these Malloa and Nebula Caridinas, they know to bugger off when these guys get rowdy. Now, I did have 4 of them in this tank, in this 20-gallon. The recommended size is at least 5 gallons. You'll get cooler behavior and probably more expressions of their color and their hunting and things like that in a larger tank. Just generally it tends to be that way, but they are not intimidated in the least by human reaching their hand into the tank usually. Until you're literally right up on them, they won't move, but then they propel themselves extremely fast with the flick of that muscle in the tail. And that's what, you know, people traditionally, they take off the very end of the tail, but they're eating that main muscle here towards the back of their body, just like in a lobster. And these were eaten, but they'd have to be collected in mass, and so it was more of a delicacy or just a little snack out while foraging, from what we can tell. Now, this species is not mentioned by name, nor did it have a name in the indigenous language specifically denoting this one compared to the other half dozen or more species on the lakes where it's found. But now these lakes have been diverted for irrigation. They've been polluted in some cases, not so much polluted in this lake, but they've been over harvested as well, and invasive species have been introduced into some of these semi-alpine lakes, and that has caused these guys to become endangered. Now, they are listed as threatened internationally and endangered in Mexico. I think on the ICUN list, endangered is also how they're listed. Both these guys have their claws, and they're just kind of fascinating to watch. They also come in bright blue. You can find them in albino or albinistic tones. They can swim easily, and they can also crawl on most surfaces. However, they usually do not crawl on glass like you'll see shrimp doing. They just don't have that dexterity or the surface tension ability. They usually also will pick a section of the tank to kind of call their territory, and they'll hang out in that section. And so it's kind of unusual, actually, in this case, for me to be seeing other shrimp and both of these two near each other, because we lost one of the other ones in a battle, and I know that because this lighter colored crayfish, who I believe to be a male, actually lost his front pincher in a battle that I witnessed part of, and it has since grown back, but sometimes you'll see them grow back bigger, smaller. than the other ones and just look kind of funny. Now, if they do really get scared, they'll tuck up into a little ball and try to hunker down. But as I said, they kind of pick an area. A lot of times they'll pick a corner. They really like right now to be able to look out. So give them a little ledge or a stick or something, a piece of wood, a stone that they can sit up on. Even this filter, the striped one here, likes to sit up on the filter so it can look out. And then the other thing they really like are dead zones. So when I say a dead zone, I mean like an area here where the current traps a lot of debris and mulm. So whether that's fish poop or little pieces of leaves and plants, extra food that didn't get eaten by the fish, that's what they eat. I do not need to feed these guys anything in particular, in that they are so aggressive. When I feed my shrimp, I actually need to make sure that the shrimp are getting enough food and watch them for a moment, because these guys will actually take over their food. They'll steal their pellets and crawl back under a log or something and take it. Now, they're even bold enough to have taken things from fish. I've seen them jump up and take things out of fish's mouths. So, you know, guppies seem to be okay. I have seen some fin nipping if you have like a fancy guppy or an endler. But if you put them with something like a danio or a cyprinid, even just like cory cats and things like that, they get out of the way for the most part of those. I had some down in this tank originally, and you'll want to check your local jurisdictions to see if you're allowed to have them. Some places you can have them, but you can't buy or sell or transport them. I know that's an odd law. That's kind of the case here. They banned buying, selling, and transporting of a bunch of them. But just like I have the Hygrophila polysperma sunset plant, sometimes eggs and things, little hitchhikers will come in unbeknownst to you, and you'll end up with these guys. Now, they usually sell for something like $8 to $15, and they can go up to $30 depending on the quality. AquaticArts.com has a great deal on them usually for the orange ones, and sometimes they have blue ones as well. The blue ones are actually my favorite, the electric blue ones. See, this guy's trying to climb the glass, and he's just kind of struggling without that leaf to wedge him in there, but he wants to get up and check out what's going on up there. They like to eat biofilm, and they're omnivores, but like I said, they will eat the baby fry. They'll eat eggs of other fish, and so they are slight predators. They just are limited to the damage they can do compared to other crayfish. So other than that, they want to be kept in pH between 6.0 and 8.0. So that's a wide range. Where they're found up in those lakes in Mexico, it's closer to the west coast of Mexico. And you can see that the water drains actually out to the Atlantic on one side of the mountains and to the Pacific on the other. So evolutionarily, we don't know quite how they got there, but their relatives are found all the way from Florida and Appalachia all the way up into Tennessee and the Carolinas and parts of Kentucky and West Virginia is as far north as they go. And then they're also found throughout Texas and New Mexico, Arizona, California, and then all of Texas. Now, these guys are also being threatened heavily by the self-spawning or cloning crayfish, the signal crayfish, that has gotten out into waterways in Southern California, Texas, and many other places, because they just get out-competed, and these guys are small. These guys are full-grown. You're going to see them being probably 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches tops. So that's probably somewhere between 4 and 6 centimeters when they're full-grown. And as far as the water temperature of keeping these little guys, you're going to want to keep that between 60 and 78, something like between 16 and 26 Celsius, 25 Celsius. So again, that was 60 to 70, 78-ish, if we're talking about Fahrenheit. Now, in here, I also have bumblebee gobies. I have a number of other critters that are kind of scavengers, hiders, ambush opportunists, as well as some juvenile pleco and a few corydoras. And as I said, they kind of all work it out and just kind of move around each other. But these Corydora habrosus seem to actually really avoid those crayfish, because I think they kind of pick on them. I think they bite, they nibble on their fins, and not that it seems to do any damage. Let's try to show you their defense mechanism, or their see, they actually will fight with my turkey baster. They will pinch it, and they will pinch your fingers, but they usually can't get a hold. And you can sometimes pick them up with suction on the top of their shell to kind of move them around, or whatever. Check them out to see if they're bearing young. Now, another interesting thing about them is that their patterns sometimes change, and I want to show you their little when they're being overpowered, how they'll flick away. So it's pretty amazing how. There we go. Let's see here. Can we get him to do it again? They can do it, though, all the way across the tank in a matter of seconds. So he's not really worried. Like I said, they're a very bold fish. Now he knows that this turkey baster is a pain in the butt. But they're still a neat crayfish and shrimp, dwarf shrimp, to add to any nano tank, any aquascape. You know, feeding them, just leave them leftovers. If you have other shrimp and fish in there, they'll find it. They'll eat algae, they'll eat biofilm, they'll eat the little teeny scuds and little seed shrimp, things like that, the mulm in the water. If you really feel the need to, if you don't have anything else in there, you can feed them spirulina algae tabs. You can feed them, this is my favorite food, which is the Hikari crab cuisine. I feed all my shrimp this, pretty much solely, from all these guys up here to my neocaradinas. Everybody eats that, and everybody seems pretty darn happy. So when breeding, like I said, the males will exhibit some brighter colors sometimes. You'll see more patterns and stripes, things like that. Right now the female has the stripes in this tank, and the male will come, and he has an extra pincher, or at least a larger pincher, and he'll flip her over, pin her down, and he will slip a packet of sperm or DNA in there, and then under her belly, and she has her saddle, which sits under her shoulder, as I mentioned, and those are her ovaries. But to release her eggs, it has to go past where he placed that packet. And so, like a little gel coat at the doorway, at that hatch where they come out, they'll be coated and then fertilized. So she won't be carrying eggs or babies under her belly unless she is in fact been fertilized. So unlike a mono shrimp and other shrimp, and they will hatch in just plain fresh water. You want to have a pH 6.0 to 8.0, like I said, because of the volcanic water that they live in. Higher is better. They don't need a ton of catappa leaves or things like that. They really do live in like long, grassy, floating grass, reeds, Nymphaea mexicana, which is a lily. They'll live in crypts, things like that. They'll live happily, sage, hornwort, things like that. This tank's actually a pretty good representation of the most planted place where they would be. They'll also really like having small rocks to hide in, sticks, moss, things like that, where they can hide and feed. So that's kind of the rundown on these guys, and if you want to get them, as I said, I've got a link, and you can get 15% off by using the code SECRETHISTORY15, all caps, at Aquatic Arts. Also, Secret History, all caps, 10 is another code you can use over and over if you've already used the other one. We do giveaways, so the more people that know about that code, the more money that goes in the giveaways. We gave away over $1,000 in prizes recently in July, so that was really cool, and I like Aquatic Arts greatly. Just make sure you can import these guys into your state. I think California and a few other places, they're not allowed to have them. So just double check. They do have the rule book at most places of what can be shipped, but better safe than sorry, because here I acquired them magically, I guess, and they just showed up one day. But beautiful. They come in a really bright electric blue also. These variants aren't found in the wild very often because they get eaten immediately. In the wild, they're kind of a gray, brown, blue, and kind of translucent. I mean, pretty similar to, these other small shrimp, like these Malawa caridina natural color shrimp. But they are a lot of fun. They're really interesting to watch. They add a little more flavor than just Neocaridina or other dwarf shrimp. And as always, thank you to all of you for watching, for giving me input. And it's a good thing to keep these species because we're finding that a lot of them are going extinct. There are, out of the 19 species, 5 of them are extinct in the wild, 3 are extinct altogether. So 8 of the 19 are not doing well in this family of crustaceans. So keeping them is a good way to keep them alive. They're tank raised at Aquatic Arts, I know. So that's why I was going to recommend them as opposed to other places. Plus their price is good, and you can buy lower grade or higher grade patterns, which this would be probably a higher grade but not the highest. It's not super orange, but it's got a nice pattern. Then they'll breed for their own on you, and you can sell them locally, so forth and so on. So there is some opportunity for making some profit off of them, some shrimp for profit, so I say, mini lobster for profit. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. I hope you like the secret history dug up on these guys and a little bit about their everyday life and movements. I think they're fascinating and beautiful, and wanted to share my experience keeping them the last 6 months or so. I kept them when I was younger and they were wild caught also when they were more natural toned. But these new variations, because they're being raised in captivity due to that endangered or threatened status, really gives a lot of new interesting quirks to the way these guys appear. Guys and gals, I should say. And it's fun to watch them use their claws, and they're still kind of this awkward little bumbling crayfish when it comes down to it. So definitely the smallest one you're probably going to find in the pet trade, and definitely the smallest one with color in the pet trade. All the other ones get 5 to 6 inches or 4 inches. So these guys max out right at that size. This is a 20 gallon. They could easily be in a 5. And that's all I've got to say. So have a wonderful day. Take care of your critters and the people around you, and the same will come right back your direction in due time. I'll talk to you later, and please like, subscribe, comment on what you think about these guys, if you've had them, any trouble, any breeding, any interesting color variations you've seen, like black or something like that. I'd love to see someone who knows about that. And other than that, I will talk to you later. Goodbye.